Hi, everybody. Very good evening. I think it is day 6 on your agenda. And I'm very thankful for anybody who has joined in today. My name is Kanksshi Agrawal. I am the founder of Netri Foundation, and I have been joined by a very brilliant volunteer of mine at Netri, Aditi Chandra. What we do at Netri Foundation is that we want to amplify women's political participation at all levels of governance and representation. What does that really mean in the layman sense? Is that we as women constitute 50% of the population, but we do not really see equal or proportionate representation of women at all levels of governance and all levels of representation. So, Netri is an organization which has already made its inroads into 4 districts of Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, where we train and do capacity building of women by making them aware about the politics around them and how can they really be a part of the political structure in the country. Why do I also lay so much importance on the politics? Because I eventually believe and I think this comes with personal is political, that everything in our life is governed by the politics around us. And it is not only politics, but it also translates into governance later on. That is why you also see there is an ever increasing focus on the kind of leaders that we are electing into our parliaments, into our democracies, or even the non-democratic countries also play a lot of role in, charting the course of history, of foreign affairs, of the economy, the world economy. And I think I place a lot of importance on politics and governance for that matter. Even if you look at, you know, the 6 countries which have been headed by women, the prime ministers and the presidents of and the chancellor of these countries have really handled the COVID situation much better than the strongmen that we see in other in other democracies and in other countries, where you are also seeing that how politics has also become a lot more about winning elections, but showing a slack or a lassitude towards governing and governing for the people that they have been elected by. So this is a brief introduction as to how we place so much importance on politics, but at the same time, we do not really understand, or we do not really engage much in the conversations about the politics of policy making. I especially have a keen interest in the politics of policy making. And even today, when we talk about the education system in India, we see that apart from the implementation of the laws that are in the education space, we see that education is a public matter. It is a public issue on which there are laws, and those laws do govern how education charts its course in the lives of the people of a country. So today we are going to mostly talk about this relationship between education and politics, but also understand, because as you would know that we are doing more sessions on the on in the democracy and the governance and the citizenship theme of the Eduthon. We want to understand, where does citizen really lie in the political minds of the politicians or of the governments when they are deciding, or when they are charting a course of the education policy in India. So this is why this session is here for you to just delve into the politics of policy making, the education and policy and politics, and where is it really on the agenda, right? So I will start sharing my screen at this point. Let me know if you can look at this. Give me a thumbs up, maybe. Can you all look at this? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So I will just do a basic introduction, what I right now also did. But apart from that, as I told you, I've been joined by Aditi. She will also take you through some bits of this presentation as a student herself. Currently, she's an enrolled student at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Hyderabad, and we would also get to learn something from her perspective. Uh, So what is the relationship of politics with education in India? This is a very big question, that why in the Eduthon are we even, worrying to discuss about politics? You are here to design new ideas to make education, say, more accessible, inclusive, education be more tech enabled, education be education of the future, because we also see that how education is also directly linked to your future prospects. It is directly linked to what you're going to do in your life next. But at the same time, why are we discussing about politics? Because we see that there is a very, very deep, cohesive relationship between politics and education in any society. Education can have so many synonyms, right? It begins with awareness. It has a synonym. It is synonymous to information. It is synonymous to knowledge. It is synonymous now as we grow to skills. So education is not really the degree that you hold from a certain college, but also how broad-minded or how adaptive you are to the growing changes around you, right? We live in very uncertain times, and we need to understand what will really impact the education that we are going to receive in the times to come. So we are here to explore and mostly analyze this relationship, and it's a two-way relationship. One, मुझे इसमें फैज याद आते हैं कि जैसे वो लोग बड़े खुशकिस्मत थे जो इश्क को काम समझते थे और काम से आशिकी करते थे. तो कभी कभी इश्क जो है वो काम के आड़े आता रहा, और कभी कभी काम जो है वो काम ने इश्क को पूरा नहीं होने दिया. आई एम नॉट वेरी वर्बैटिम, बट बिकॉज पॉलिटिक्स भी ऐसे कभी कभी एजुकेशन के आड़े आती रही, और एजुकेशन भी जो है वो कभी कभी पॉलिटिक्स के सामने एक बड़ी सी मोमेंटस वॉल बन के खड़ा होता रहा, right? So this is the symbiotic relationship between education and politics that we are going to learn today. And why is it important? Because you have to think about the people who are really deciding your future in terms of education in this country. And I have this famous quote. I always say it. I think I also did it in my coffee conversation with Sharwari, that no one is really going to give you the education that you need to overthrow them. If you start beginning to understand this, and if you also, like, I'm assuming, or I'm presuming here, that you're all either educators or you're students who have these brilliant ideas and you want to explore those ideas, but you have to understand who really obstructs your education. Why is it that there is such a large disparity in our society, that a certain class gets education, a certain gender gets education, a certain religion gets education, a certain region gets more education, and the others are, quite left to fend for themselves on very low skills, on low awareness, because there is an obstruction. There is a constant force at work, which sometimes is conscious, sometimes is also unconscious. And why this unconsciousness seeps into these people is also that we are going to talk about today. So I'm handing it over to Aditi. Aditi, you can unmute yourself and start your presentation.
So, hi everyone, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm Aditi, and I'm an intern at Netri right now. So as Kanksshi has already explained how politics is related to education and vice versa, so I'll be focusing on the protest aspect of it and how student politics works out and why does it even matter, right? So a lot of times, like most of the universities, especially public universities in India, have been engulfed with protests all over the country, and the students raising their voice against a lot of issues that come up. And it comes to why do the reason comes that most of the protests have been about the privatization of education and the inaccessibility of education that exists in our country right now. So a lot of private universities are increasing their fees. We have seen in JNU protest 2019, like this example, that this increase, the fees was increased by 300%. We have seen this in my own university test. We have seen this in Pondicherry University, right? So in that sense, there's a lot of inaccessibility, that a lot of masses can't access education despite having the talent to do so, and it's their right to do so, right? So, and secondly, a lot of times, despite having the mechanism of reservations, that is very important, we don't have the means, like even when women come into in universities after reservation, or people from marginalized sections come in, even though they have access to the institution, but there's still, instances of casteism, there's instances of sexism and homophobia, etc., that affect their education within the campus. And one of the examples is the death of Rohit Vemula by suicide in 2016, that led to a lot of protests, and that's not just one death that happened, right? And also want to talk about how, as a student, I have experienced many protests, I have gone to many protests in this, and a lot of that has been about, the GOI PMS scholarship, the cut of funding, the problem of sexual harassment, and how the administration refuses to talk about it. In that sense, when we protest, a lot of time the administration itself that has actually given us lessons on social justice and taught us about all these things comes to the matter that, it does not matter, that it's okay if scholarships are going, and that is something very, hypocritic for them. And that's why student politics is important, because it increases awareness and brings a lot of accountability on their part as well. And another thing is that a lot of times student politics is seen as something that is wrong and that is destructive to the country, but I think it should be seen as something that impacts and furthers a political consciousness and democratic, structure of the country. So, in that, and I have also, and how student politics works out is also in the sense ki, how important and how beautiful it goes. Like, don't want to romanticize protests, but also if we see protest structures and how protests work out, they're very empathetic in nature, they are cooperative, and everybody is out there for a cause to work on, right? So in that scenario, the whole solidarity that builds up, that whole consciousness of students as young people who are going to act in the future, that's something very important that student activism brings to the ground. So I have just one question for Kanksshi, because she has been a student at this and she has been a part of student activism. So what did she take away from that, if she can answer that?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for throwing that question at me, Aditi. So, as she rightly pointed out, that student protests build a lot of empathy and compassion. I will tell you, and this is another misconception about student politics, that it is only for the people who aim to come into politics later, or it is only for the people who want to do activism later on. Yes, all the famous faces that you see in the country's politics today or on the activism side, yes, they are a product of student politics, and they are a product of a lot of protests. And it is not to shame that somebody wants to come into politics, but at the same time, अगर आपको यहाँ पे एक picture दिख रही है, उसमें लाखों लाखों लोगों की भीड़ दिख रही है, right? There are so many people, and you don't see all of them in politics. Maybe one or two or a couple of them will come into mainstream leadership. So who are these people? So I learned from being a part of the student politics that politics is for everyone, because it puts you at the center of everything. Second, you don't have to have a political ambition to be a part of, to have a political awareness or to have a political conscience, right? It is very important to have a moral, ethical, political conscience. Third is the empathy, of course, whatever. So I look at student protests or, these movements as a very empathetic place of, I remember being on TIS campus when the GOIPMS was going on, and you won't believe, everybody on any side of the political spectrum was on that protest, because it was affecting the fee, because of the fee hike, it was affecting them directly, and everybody was taking turns कि यार आज रात को मैं थोड़ी देर जाके सोऊंगा, मतलब अपने रूम में, फिर कल आके मैं पूरे दिन प्रोटेस्ट करूंगा. People were writing their theses at that point, right? People were all attending classes and coming to the protest. It is such an understanding between also the teachers and the students, apart from like some yes, some teachers and some administration will be against you, but some teachers will be like, वो अभी class में तुम्हारे साथ पढ़ के भी आ रहे हैं, फिर तुम्हें protest भी करने दे रहे हैं. So you understand the gist of democracy. And I wouldn't take any more time and pass it on back to Aditi. So these are my few learnings. I can share them with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So before I move on, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So before I move on to the timeline, I just want to add for my experience with protest. I think along with empathy, one of the most important things has been understanding how critical you're supposed to be, not only for the cause you are doing, but also with the protest, how you need to understand how your privilege is working out and how everyone is working out in that scenario. And in that sense, as you said, right, it builds a lot of democratic spirit, and it makes us understand how things should work out ideally. So I think that's something as students we are demanding, and students have a lot of power to change things. Otherwise, they won't be cutting funds, they won't be so against students and firing in campuses, for example, JMI. So in that sense, students have a lot of power. So student protests have been a part of India for a long time. And in recent times, we have seen protests in JNU, in FTII, Jadavpur University, and other places. But it really comes back to the question that, is it recent? A lot of people in my own family asked me that, why are you protesting? Like, this is all a mess created by JNU in 2016. But it can't be so, right? That suddenly this political consciousness is awakened in students in 2016. It has to have a history to it. So the history of protest goes back to the freedom struggle, and right now the timeline is based on post to 1950s, and this list is non-exhaustive, obviously, because there have been hundreds of protests. These are just some of them. So we'll be covering Nav Nirman Andolan and JP, the previous one, please, Kanksshi. And the JP movement. So I'll talk about in brief of all the others that I mentioned here. So in the anti-Hindi agitation that happened in 1965 was happening in Tamil Nadu by DMK because of the Official Languages Act that made Hindi official language along with English, and that took a lot of opposition from the southern states, especially because Hindi is not a language of all of the states in the country, and hence it can't be the only one that is official. So it was taken back after much deliberation. And Assam agitation was about in 1979 about the illegal migrants that were coming in and to save the Assamese identity. So that went on till 1985 and was finally done with Assam Accords. The Mandal movement happened in 1990s when there were massive protests after the 27% OBC reservation during the VP Singh government. And the Jadavpur University protests in 2014 were about the alleged attacks on students who were unarmed, and the case to look into the molestation cases by the police and the administration, which led to the resignation of the VC. The FTIA agitation was against the councillor. Pinjra Tor happened in 2015. It was against raising voice against the sexist laws that happen in campus. And a lot of times women are not given the same rights as men students, and they are, the campus laws based on dress codes, based on the timings and curfews. So it brought about that issues very importantly. JNU protests 2016 were about talk about after the attack of ABVP during Afzal Guru's, like the talk on Afzal Guru's hanging. And then we have protests against Rohit Vemula's death I've talked about already, and the fee hike, and currently again the CA and NRC that has seen a lot of like massive state crackdown against the student. Now I'll come to Nav Nirman Andolan in 1974 that actually led to developments of the JP movement and student agitation towards Indira Gandhi and the emergency in 1975. So in December 1973, a lot of students in LD Engineering College took against the administration against the fee hike that made inaccessibility an issue for many students. This strike was countered with attacks on students by the Congress government and the police, which then led to Gujarat University and other universities across Gujarat to take on the issue, and the whole movement was launched against the government itself, which had a lot of crackdown by police force, and people were even killed. So in that sense, when this ultimately led to the dissolution of the state assembly in Gujarat, and this shows us how student protests can actually become, spaces that dissent and they actually make things happen. So next, it will be going to Kanksshi for the next rest of the session
So,
with JP movement.
thank you. In the interest of time, thank you for sharing this with us, Aditi. Whatever Aditi spoke about, I will tie it back to why are we looking at this? Like, you'll be like, oh, we are here to design an Eduthon, we are here to design some new ideas, but why are we looking at the protest anyway? You understand that dissatisfaction, is the root cause for any protest and agitation. And this dissatisfaction comes into the student's life. It could be very personal, something like a fee hike or a hostel fee hike or a canteen fee hike, or the cutting of the scholarships, or something like a pinjra tour. It could be really very personal because, as Aditi also mentioned, and we spoke about it, that how women might have been given the reservation to enter the universities or also study in school, but you are not able to fundamentally look at the issues that still um, plague the life of women once they are in an educational setup, right? There is an inherent sexism or inherent societal mores that still governs the life of women. And the expectation out of any education, and we still see that in the media a lot of times, be it about JNU or even in the past, like from Arun Jaitley's time. And I really think that he led one of the greatest protests in the country at those point. He was also a part of the JP movement. He was leading it from the front. But you see that it is always said, अरे बच्चों को पढ़ने भेजा, ये लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? पर बच्चों को एक्चुअली आपने पढ़ने भेजा है अकॉर्डिंग टू अ माइंडसेट दैट यू थिंक इज एजुकेशन. You really don't know what is actually education and awareness for them. They might be looking at a very personal cause, or they could be looking at a very national cause, and they might be unable to understand patterns in something, right? And that is why they collude, they put people together, they mobilize, and they come out to protest. Now, this is very important from the student side, that they have been a part of the student movement protest during the emergency, which was a gross violation of human rights, and we still stand by that emergency was something that shouldn't have been imposed on India. And again, there were leaders who emerged from that. But at the same time, you also have to look at the agenda of education and political manifestos. And I was attending this amazing talk by and what my boss was also a panelist on that, and she said that how education in the last few years has still found a place in the political manifesto, and it has become a political agenda apparently, but healthcare was not. And what we see today with the mispreparedness or the underpreparedness with the COVID handling situation in the country, or also across the world, because health never really became a political issue. Air pollution को अगर manifesto में ऊपर डालने के पीछे कितना अंदर से how many parties really go through that tumultuous thing that, oh, who will vote us for air pollution, who will vote us for climate change, who will vote us if we are going to say that we are going to give you free health, or we are going to expand our health budget allocations or something like that. But people always think that they can play politics on education, and which has happened in last few years. But at the same time, when you look at it in the manifestos that the parties lay out before the election, we are not saying that manifestos are the exact imitation of a political party's intention, because we also see that manifestos are sometimes, and most often than not, never delivered upon. But it at least shows some part of intention of the political parties. And when they come out with this, what do you really see? So we have made a comparison for you all, that where does education really lie in BJP, Congress, and we also have AAP in their manifestos. We'll do a comparison of 2019 and 2014 and look at what are the states and the governments and the parties so obsessed about when they write about education? Okay, they are obsessed about legalities, they are obsessed about regulations, they are obsessed about infrastructure, they are obsessed about budget allocation, they are obsessed about teachers training. Apparently this is a word that we have found, finding its way in every manifesto somewhere or the other. They are worried about metrics like teacher to pupil ratio, right? But where is the citizen? Where is you and me? And how do I really get to choose education? If I don't want to go to a school, why is everybody after my life to get into school, right? Or I don't want to get into a university to achieve a particular status in the society, but I am forced to do that because society has started equating going to school or going to a certain college or going to a particular Ivy League as equivalent to education. Where are the communities? Where are the citizens' parents? Like, students' parents who are the citizens. Where are they? Where are they? Never form the the consciousness of the political parties is very, very much embedded in things that are very material, and again serves their purpose in the sense that they do not have to awaken the citizens really. So let's do that. I've already concluded what I'm trying to say, again in the interest of time, but let's still look at what these manifestos are talking about. They're talking about the school education to be transferred to the state list. This is Congress, okay? To the state list in the seventh schedule of the constitution, while retaining the subject of higher education in the union list. So this is a very regulatory, administrative point of view that they have taken. Then compulsory and free education in public schools. Again, great move. We are not here to criticize reservation, or we are not here to criticize that, RTE to be implemented in spirit. But where does this thought come from really, right? We are leaving that kind of processing, and this is just a stimulus for your thoughts. So we are going to talk about compulsory and free education, right? Then there is capacity, number and quality of teacher training institute. Again, that is absolutely seeped into. And these are just promises. These are like broad-based promises which will only come into policy when you see something like a national education policy come into picture, right? And there is something that we are also preparing for you to read on national education policy. So please be up on your game and read those modules when they come along you. So here we are looking at, again, this metrics of number, quality, teachers. Then you have the double the allocation, uniform quality of education, and to improve learning outcomes. Now, these are great promises, but who does it really intend to benefit, and how, and whose consent, or whose opinion, or whose I would like to say whose thoughts were taken into account when these policies were drafted or these promises were drafted, right? So focus on teachers training, again, establishing a national institute of teachers training. So this focus on infrastructure, that you should have these giant institutions, which is great. Again, this is not to sabotage or not sabotage the efforts in the direction of increasing infrastructure and capacity, but this is just to say that in all these promises, now you have another point, that move ahead to provide smart classes to our children in schools. Uh, while this looks like a great glitzy promise and it should be done, but our our children really in a position to determine what is good for them, what is not good for them? Are you actually talking to their parents that will they like to go to a smart class? Yes, there has been a lot of research that yes, smart classes build in a lot of interactive abilities for these students, but at the same time, who was consulted, who was spoken to when these promises were made? So formulate new regulatory mechanisms, flexible and industry responsive workforce. ARP's manifesto looks like this. Every child will be entitled to free world-class education from nursery to class 12th, reservation for Delhi students in college admissions, recruit regular teachers as per requirement, existing guest teachers to be converted into regular guest teachers. So after a point, you just know where this is going, right? After a point, you know that an act, Education Act to ensure quality learning outcomes, adequate infrastructure and facilities in school. That is something Congress manifesto said in 2014, and BJP manifesto kind of focused on national education policy, which is the last point here. National education policy to meet the changing dynamics of population's requirement, which they have really come out with. And it is a policy document that all of us should definitely look at if we are thinking about designing new ideas in education. Now, but however, what was interesting for me was to look at AAP's manifesto of 2014 and look at the third point, involvement of local community in the creation of context-rooted curriculum and management of schools. Now, this is something that you don't see very often. Now, I'm not here trying to promote one party over the other, because we also saw that, the same concept did not repeat itself in the 2019. However, it was a great thought in 2014. We might not see the implementation, or we might see some implementation to some extent in that direction. But the idea is that political parties are not actively thinking about you and me, right? They are thinking about things that they think matter, which they do at some level, but but they say that you have to have a multiple pronged approach when you address an issue. You have to think about infrastructure, you have to think about resources, and then you have to think about community, you have to think about your citizens, you have to think about the students. For example, there are countries in the world uh, which have completely disbanded their schooling program. They're like, no, we are not doing this, right? Okay, one morning, one of the ministers, and this was an instance shared by a friend, that one morning, one minister in a Western country woke up and he's like, I am going to ban all the schools. I don't want, from tomorrow onwards, you're not going to school, right? But at this point, we will overhaul and think what we want to do with our education system next. Right now, think of COVID as something that is going to change the face of education system in India. And it is people like you, and people, the educators, my mother, for example, and this is a personal example. My mother is a teacher herself. She's a lecturer in a government school, and she has been, because she's a government teacher in Madhya Pradesh, she has been allotted the task of teaching students online. And apparently, one of the presentations that she sent me last week, I went over it again and again. So she was sharing, like whatever she did for last 2 months, she put that together in a presentation format. In one of the conversations, she screenshotted a conversation with a student's mother, apparently. Well, so she's texting a student at 2 a.m. in the night, okay? And she is like, beta, aap abhi tak kaise jage ho? It's 2 a.m. Have you finished your courses and have you like looked at everything? Tum abhi tak kaise jage ho? Now, apparently the reply comes in कि मैं so and so नहीं हूँ, मैं so and so की मम्मी हूँ, और मेरी बेटी और मैं फोन शेयर करते हैं, ठीक है? वो दिन में पढ़ती है, अभी रात को मुझे भी अपना कुछ काम करना था, शायद उस बच्चे की मम्मी जो भी है वो ऑपरेटर है, वो शायद डेटा ऑपरेटर है कहीं पे, तो उसने बोला कि रात को मैं मेरे पास रहता है फोन. एंड लेटर शी एंडेड अप कॉम्प्लीमेंटिंग माय मदर दैट अरे आप मुझे अच्छा लग रहा है कि आप बच्चों की पढ़ाई को छोड़ के बाकी चीजों का भी ध्यान रख रहे हो. एंड आई वाज सुपर सरप्राइज्ड. आई एम लाइक, why are you texting your students at 2 a.m. mom? Like, you have no better work to do, you could text me instead. And this was probably only one random incident, and I'm not saying that my mother is a great teacher, that she's trying to focus on students, but I'm trying to say that because her empathy has built up to a level, because she's seen all of us grow up and be very connected to our teachers. Like, I'm super connected to my professors and to the people I work with, so she thought that she should also build that empathy, and it is just it's a reverse learning, that you're seeing that this is the new day, this is the new age where you have to also think about the mental health and the well-being of your student beyond their curriculum, beyond the fact that why is this bacha awake at 2 a.m. and she was really concerned at that point, maybe. So this is a that's what I was saying, that, these are this right now, COVID is the time where a person like my mother, who would really be a tech disabled person, like she doesn't know how to do, it's a task to go back home and teach her how to use WhatsApp, and how to teach her YouTube. But really, she's also upskilling herself, right? And this is your opportunity, where you have these teachers, you have students, you have parents who are deliberately trying to upskill themselves. And this is the overhaul point. This is the time that you're waiting for, to really bring back community, to bring back parents, to bring back citizens and students at the center of the political thought, at the center of the policy making. And that is why I think it was very important just to have this conversation. Probably you learned something out of this, probably you did not, but it's a great idea to go back to manifestos and look at what parties were really thinking. It is a great marker for you to also be an aware citizen and vote accordingly next time, probably. But at the same time, when you are designing something, you need to start focusing on these things and seep into policy making. And so I'll tell you one personal example, because I was a part of Congress's manifesto committee in 2019. I will tell you that there was a lot of public consultation that Congress opened itself to during 2019, and we met with a lot of educators, we met with a lot of people, but clearly, probably, we did not so much think about the community even back then. And I'm not speaking on behalf of Congress or anything. I'm just speaking on behalf, like, this also probably did not occur to me at that point, and it is only an afterthought, and I'm really concerned about it going forward. But this gives you an opportunity, a window, that next time you all can with your ideas, can be at the center of activism, also in the sense that you can send the copy of an education manifesto to all these 3-4 parties, or a regional party in your area, draw up these ideas based on the ideas that you're working on right now, and make sure that community and citizens and parents come at the center of education, so that we are able to democratize it. That is where I would like to end with my last slide, and I'll take only a couple of minutes and open it to questions. So education, right, duty, and privilege. I want to also just put a lot of emphasis on what really education means to us right now. Education has become an enabler for accessing opportunities. You are accessing education from a point of view that you would be in a very good place as an earning member of your family, or you would be getting so-and-so job. It is a great mechanism or a great tool to skill yourself, but education is beyond that. Education is the backbone of any society. Education is collective. Education, so for example, you also see what happened in Kerala with respect to handling the COVID situation, and they did it practically without using any technology, right? They did not have an app that was doing contact tracing. They had physical contact tracing mechanisms. Also, the larger consciousness of people in Kerala. We always say that Kerala is an outlier. Whenever we go and study policy, we always look at Kerala as an outlier, because it has like such high education, literacy rate. It has great gender equality, like it is trending towards gender equality most of the time, but we still see a lot of discrimination. I'm not again negating that. But the idea is that Kerala is a very largely conscious society. Like the society is built on very collective values. And you also see all these countries that I spoke about are female headed, are also very educated countries. So the role that you want women to someday say lead, or come into the positions of power, these are the markers. If your society is a more collectively conscious, collectively educated, collectively progressive society, you will also start automatically creating space for women at the top job, at the positions of leadership of all sorts, not only political, corporate, governance, within the bureaucracy, everywhere. So that is something that we have to think about and achieve. It helps you also achieve your own full potential, right? It enables me to understand myself. It enables me to self-reflect. It enables me to uh, reflect on the surrounding. I'm always constantly bogged by the geopolitics. I'm constantly bogged by the world and the global economy and the politics around me. I'm always taking it very personally, but also at the same time detaching my consciousness or my personal life from what politics really is. But it is so submerged, I would rather say. It is so submerged, and I think it is a product of the education that I fought for, or the education that my parents were very conscious of having me get it, or something like that. But personal and professional satisfaction, you already know that the more educated you are, you do feel more adapt uh, I should say not adapt. I think you feel more in place with the work that you do. If you're educated, you feel secure, you feel confident, you feel more satisfied. And it enhances your participation in the society and politics, as we anyway spoke about. And awareness is the first step to movement. Again, you can become an effective citizen if you're more educated, and you can pay your bills and amplify your opportunities. There is no denying that. But that is me signing off from this conversation. You can follow us, you can talk to me. I have given my number, I have given my email ID. You can also talk to Aditi if you liked her presentation. But thank you for being in this session with us today. I am opening this conversation to questions, and we can get into some dialogue here. But thank you again. Hi, where am I gonna get my questions? Do I
chat.
In the chat?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see anybody in the chat yet. Hello, people. If you have any questions, you can start putting them down. We are here to talk to you.
I have allowed everybody to ask questions, but I don't know, like we don't have any questions.
So far.
Yes.
Why we don't have questions? This looks like a it looks like a monologue. Then it's not a dialogue. Please talk to me. I would love that. So somebody has said good evening. And I'm like, okay, hi Satyam, good evening. But is there any question for us? Are you all able to? You can they unmute themselves and ask us question? Is that a possibility?
Okay, I will do that then.
If that's convenient, you can do that. Okay, there's one question coming in. Does government really doesn't want to provide an education which will question them? You all have to tell this. Like I really think that. So I'll tell you why I say this. There is, if you were to look at law, or I also took a session on public policy in India with Sharwari the other day. And Sharwari kept on saying that, all these policy documents, or these documents which are really, really, really complex. Okay. And I remember this very, very, famous politician, I'm not going to name him, but he made a remark on one of the judgments that came out of the Supreme Court and said, you can figure out which was this judgment, that what was the point of writing 100 or a 200-page judgment. Okay. You could have, so there are deliberate steps sometimes taken by judiciary, the media also. Sometimes, the job of the media is to break down issues and bring it to you in the most understandable manner, or the most edible manner. But what they end up doing is that, they take your eyes off the main issue and fixate it on something else. So what what is this deliberation that, it is very hard to, for example, contest in India, contest for a post in India. Why? Because the nomination process is so complex, and nomination to the point you actually, run for a position in a government setup, like, or in the democratic setup, that I want to even fight an election as a panchayat member. Even that process is like, itne log lekar aao, itna ye lekar aao, itna wo lekar aao. And it, I understand it could be complex, but you also have to understand that your people have not adapted to that level of complexity, right? So you will have to make simpler documents for them to understand, but nobody takes that effort. Nobody makes that effort. And, there is definitely a gap between what the government knows and what you know as a citizen. Hello, ma'am. Do you think the government has had a proper vision and mission in mind while drafting the education policies in the past, as well as in the new education policy draft recently launched? Right. Yes, I will never say that government lacks vision and it lacks mission. It does, like, for example, the best and the most important legislation in India is the right to education. It is quoted across sectors. It is said that it is one of the biggest enabler in this country, and you now know the importance of it. But at the same time, they have a vision and they have a mission. It is just that in which direction is this mission and vision aligned? Okay, who does it benefit? Who does it serve? Does it serve the private corporations to get into education? We see a geo university without even having the building built up, given the tag of the university or the education institute of eminence. So who does that vision and mission really serve is a question, and that is what one has to think about. Even with the national education policy draft, there are great criticisms and there are great appreciations of that policy. Okay, and we will be bringing that to you in forms of modules. So whoever is interested in reading shall do that. We will have provide to you the criticism, the positives, and the way forward. So yes, there is a vision, there is a mission. Sometimes it's short term, sometimes it's long term, but they do not seem to understand the beat of the nation. Sometimes they do not seem to understand the beat of the child and the citizens at the center of the education, right? Then there is another question. The generations that have lived and selected our leaders do not trust or provide space to students for political participation or be vocal about their curiosities and doubts. It is also due to the concept of nation that the modern history, nation states, cater to of a glorified past. Yes, how to deal with such a lack of space or even information, how to open the doors of the closed political structure. Sorry for the length. I really like this question, Vidij, and I can recognize you also from yesterday. We had a conversation with Ritu. Thank you for this question. You see that the parents that you're talking about, or the where you and I come from. Okay, we come from basically middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, or the lower strata of the society, which have been through mechanisms, the political tools and instruments have been kept out of policy making and politics for a very long time. Our parents' generation's struggle was to earn a decent living, was to make their mark in terms of at least not being dependent on their parents. Their generation was dependent a lot more on the limited opportunities in the economic space. With the liberalization, with our generation coming in, and with so many economic opportunities, and also the opportunities of exploring ourselves in terms of arts, humanities, sciences, everything has opened up and blasted in our faces. Okay, and it is just that because of this gap that you talk about, the gap of information, the gap of knowledge, that our parents' generation was not able to completely adapt and adopt the change. And there were so many opportunities right in our faces, but we could not make the best of it. And that's why we also straddled back on the economic progression. Only a few who had that knowledge could capitalize on it and build generations of money for their offspring. Now when you say that, how do we and yes, there are there is a lot of discouragement, but I think you and I and everybody around us is in the age that we can start this discourse when we go to college and when we go to universities. If you are an educator, let that be an opening, an opening conversation for your students. Like, I don't know what category do you lie. Are you a student? Are you an educator? Wherever on the spectrum you lie, your small efforts can be one to actively be a part of a lot of political conversations. And I don't mean social media. I mean local political conversations. How often do we really go and speak to our municipal councillor, right? We don't. Or how often do you really go and, like, look at the state of the art of your own ward or constituency and talk to people on the ground, or just talk to them about their political views or what the government is doing and not doing? You can do that yourself, but in the classrooms, or in all these digital, digital classrooms, you can, just like how we are creating a space for a political dialogue in the middle of an eduthon, we can do that. We can definitely create these spaces of conversations to know more about politics and be a part of some, like, for example, Netri. I am, when we talk about Netri, we are there to train women to come into politics. But at the same time, we are building caucuses of women, and we are building a tribe of women who can also talk to each other, because the anxiety of a woman in a certain party, like it can be the ruling party, which is BJP, and the anxiety of a woman who is also in the opposition in Congress or AAP or any other party, is same. They go through similar things, and it's just that it is because of the political structures of the political parties that they have similar experiences despite parties. So we are also trying to bring these women together and just, like, have their conversation despite ideological barriers. So that is what we are trying to do. You can join us. You can be a part by teachers and education.
Can I answer the earlier one, like just with my anecdote?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
So as a student, not like I'm not a policy expert or anything, but just as a student, right, I've sort of seen that how, everything is very, like, as it's perceived by my parents, like, my family members or parents or other elders, to say as something that is as like the whole, nature of them growing up has been apolitical, or, there's no history attached to it, when they assume that only now dissent is coming in, only now people are, raising their voices, which is assumed that we are blind when we are doing that. But we forget that this has been happening for so long. When we see, like, as even above, right, the history of Arun Jaitley being a leader, and then even in violent protests. So I think that's something we have to, like, I don't know if we can reach out to them, because they seem to have a very strict kind of boundary in, like, perceiving political opinions. But as Kanksshi said, that we have to build a safe space for each other to talk about. So even in terms of my own college experience, a lot of times during protest, we actually came about and talked to each other with people who are from different ideologies. But that did not happen mostly on a regular day basis, because we were like, okay, that ideology is something, like, we support it or not. In that sense, we have to build a very, inclusive space for everyone that is safe, and
Yeah.
not just smaller discourses that, that finish the moment the conversation ends.
True. Thank you for that, Aditi. And I have a very important question here, and it is about, do you think online teaching is the sudden change where parents are still juggling with the availability of smartphones and internet access? Absolutely. I think, and I keep on repeating that the COVID has not presented inequalities to us. It has only exacerbated and brought to life the existing inequalities that were in the society, right? And internet and digital divide is one of them. Not everybody has the access to the smartphones. Even within households, the father has it or the brother has it, and the girl or the woman is still struggling to get access to it. And even if they get access to it, they don't have an educator or an enabler or a facilitator who will tell them how to use it more effectively. Because men do whatever they do with their phones. They might be in WhatsApp groups. They could be, looking at some TikTok videos probably, or they could be, talking to their friends. But how do you actually use this device to your own advantage? Is that what we need to teach a lot of people? So will the online teaching? Yes, online teaching will start becoming an integral part of education, and I'll tell you why. Uh, it might be a different kind of a conversation with respect to that how H-1B visa has been cancelled in the US currently. It does not only impact the people who are still there, but it also impacts the decision of the people and to the into the class of students who wanted to go abroad and study in a particular university in the US, right? So you look at it and you'll be like, why do I have to go to US? Now I will not also get the visa anyway. Rather, I'll log on to Coursera and get the best course at the click of my at the click of my fingertip. So yes, online education will start becoming integral as in when and the more and more as we realize that pedagogy matters. The student teacher relationship also matters, which can be built in an online space, and you don't have to go all the way to get the education that you need. But again, I'm not going to discount the values that come out of a classroom experience. I loved being in classrooms with my peers and running into political debates or running into fundamental debates. I love that experience. I think we will cut down on that experience mostly if we go online, but it will become integral. There is no doubt about that. And it will it bring this to a situation where teacher will be not needed anymore? No, I don't think so. Rather, the profession of teaching and education will start getting more importance also by the government, and even teachers will start getting more importance with respect to now it is only going to be about the teacher and the pedagogy, and of course the curriculum and everything. But because you can access any teacher I want, I can sign up to Steve Jarding's online lectures and learn about political communication because I really want to be taught by Steve Jarding. So the idea is that teachers should be and would be given more importance. Yes, you have to bring them to the center of the debate. Right now, you can't be like, I can just sign up for any course, but these courses are also taken by a lot of facilitators. I was doing a course on Coursera from Yale University, the science of happiness. Okay. And I think I really liked the facilitator. I liked the teacher, the professor who was teaching it. And I think the course experience will differ for two people not taking it with the teacher that it was, meant to be taken by, from, and versus if I can just like look at slides and just read random things online. So the perspective building that a teacher does is something more important, and it is indispensable to any education debate in the country. So that is in the country or in the world or anywhere in the society. Yeah, I think there is one more question. Thank you, Kanksshi and Aditi. It was really, the question I have right now is, how can we appreciate and accommodate dissent, or for that matter, even asking question or discourse of such sort in elementary education? In elementary education, so I think Aditi answered that how can we appreciate and accommodate dissent. But in elementary education, I think your pedagogy will come, how you encourage your students to ask questions in the class, the kind of thoughts you open their world to. It is very important for them to know that they have to love their, peers despite their political opinions or despite the fundamental differences. And I remember being in classrooms. I think our generation was like a very, very privileged ones because we had very, very diverse. I grew up in a very diverse classroom, okay? And I say I grew up because I think I spent a lot of time in school more than at home or in any coaching or in any education institution. And that diversity it still stays with me. I had so many fundamental differences with so many of my friends, even when growing up. So I think you can encourage it by being the facilitator of that dialogue. If you are in that position to do that right now, you can design your courses where there are questions. Instead of giving them answers, you can design your questions to have your curriculum to have questions. Even though I had subjects like civics in my secondary classes, I couldn't have an exposure of discourse until my master's. I wanted to understand how we can bring the basic understanding of politics and how is it so much a part of our lives from the early years of schooling, and then practices of participatory decision making, showing discourses, democratic value, etc., from elementary level. Same question, I think. It is an extension of that question. basic understanding of our politics and how is it so much a part of our lives. Um, if it is in your hands, I think politics should be understood beyond the political parties. Politics should be understood as personal experiences. I am deeply political when it comes to gender because I think I have lived experiences which I can never discount for, and I have a very how do I say? I was made conscious of those decisions as and when I was growing up. And later, of course, at master's level only, you have understood a lot of things. I think it happened for me also in college. But my personal rebel started at the age of 16, okay, with respect to, just dispelling the gender norms that were around my life. So I think it is very important that you tell them how politics is personal and where you're coming from is very important. And then practices of participatory decision making. There are very good tools on consensus building, participatory decision making, uh, and things that promote discourse. I think there's this brilliant movie called 12 Men. The 12, the 11 Men or the 12 Men. I can share that movie link later on with the group, and you can access it. It is one of the best movies on consensus building. Lean. God, I'm forgetting the movie's name right now. So you can bring in new tools such as videos, such as this audio. The podcasts are the new in, and you can make sure that your students are exposed to so many different ideologies right from the start, and give them an opportunity to decide what is right for themselves based on their personal politics. So we cannot discard anybody's politics unless and until the time it starts getting rooted in their in their own personal experiences. That will make politics more authentic. So, and we will stop trolling each other, right? I think okay, 12 Angry Men. Yes, Ek Ruka Hua Faisla and 12 Angry Men. Pallavi, thank you for that. 12 Angry Men. That was that. It is expected that religion will drive the socio-political movement. I think this is our last question, and then we'll bring a close to this question. It is expected that religion will drive the socio-political movements, narratives in the coming decade, and even towards conservativeness. But conversation and religion are non-existent during the life cycle of students or even adults, keeping in mind the resistance of parents. I think I sort of disagree, Dhadich, that religion is not a part of our lives, because I think religion is the dominating and the most dominating part of our lives. Maybe not in the well, I think education is also praxis. Praxis is mostly practice and theory, right? In practice, you get a lot of religion at home. I think especially the way we are allowed or permitted to think about a few things is driven and enforced by religion in our domestic household spaces. So I think religion will drive the social political movement. No, it has been driving it. However, the effort is to change it from religion and bring it to more of data and evidence-based policy making, issues-based politics, data-based politics. It is less. We have to strive towards a society where religion starts becoming a matter of personal faith and personal practice, instead of a public validation or a public display of religion. There is public display of affection, then there is public display of religion, which actually causes, and it has been, religion is like practically theocracy was when churches were practically the governments. So one has to move away from that, not return to it. And yes, it is like, while I'll address, yes, it is happening across the world that religion is coming to the forefront again. But I think the politics of tomorrow should be more personal, personal in sense of identity that you have and you cannot change. There are things that you cannot change about yourself. Sometimes your sexuality, your gender, your thinking, your thought process also, many times. I might come from a certain religion, but my thought process could allow me to just go beyond it. So I think keeping in mind the resistance, I don't think there is any resistance from the parents per se to talk about religion, because they practice it and they make sure that you practice too. So that is my understanding of it. You can agree, disagree, but thank you for having us here. we are bringing a close to the session, and yeah, I think we've answered most of our questions. So thanks again. Bye bye, Ria. I hope I can end this call if you're there. Yeah. Ria, are you there, Ria? No, Ria is.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we are bringing the session to a close. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thank you, Aditi, ma'am.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.